Another Dooley Noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in Celebration Point. Okay, and welcome to another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios. Had a great lunch with my good buddy Joe Calorio over at Titan MRI on Thursday. We were having a golf tournament meeting, which is all I ever seem to have. It's funny. I went to Leonardo's on Wednesday and Titan on Thursday. I didn't go there, but we had lunch. I went to Leonardo's, and two great meals. And one of them was at Nopal, which is another sponsor of the Bob Dooley Invitational. And that's all I'm going to talk about the tournament. Okay, we're 2 weeks out. I'm not going to talk about it. We're full. We got all these great prizes. We got all these amazing sponsors. All these people are going to be out there. Just say a prayer for no rain. That's the only thing I can't control. And, of course, we're coming to you from the Meldon Law Gator Studios at Steve Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. And we'll have Coach Spurrier will not be on again Monday. He's playing in a golf tournament. There's something in Peach Bowl golf tournament. Let me tell you what, if I had a choice of doing this podcast or playing in that tournament, I would take that 11 times out of 10. It is a big deal tournament, and you get all kinds of stuff just for showing up and everything, versus coming to the podcast and you sit here and go, well, Pat, our golf team's pretty good. Golf team won the SEC. So I don't blame them. So here's what we've done. We've altered some of the scheduling. Today, the great Andy Staples from The Athletic, I love having him on. He's great. Will join us. And then on Monday, Blake Topmeyer, who had another situation where he had to move his to Monday, and which works out fine. And we look forward to having him from USA Today, and we'll talk to those two guys about what's going on. Let us get to the starting lineup. Today is brought to you by our friends at Ballyhoo Grill, which is where I'm going to be later today, because we're having a anniversary party kind of for, I cannot put enough sarcastic quotations around that, but for Chris Harry, my good friend Chris Harry and his wife, Cindy, the better half, certainly. Not even close in this case, but in most cases, it's not close. So we're going to be there, having a good time. Then I'm playing golf Saturday in a tournament. So I haven't played in a tournament in a while. All right, here we go. It is a Ballyhoo starting lineup. Number one, obviously the big story around here, Anthony Richardson taken with the fourth pick in the draft. It was so weird. First of all, don't listen to anybody anymore, okay? Because people, I've tried to warn people about this. And I know that 90% of you probably don't listen anyway. You don't care what the mock drafts are or what speculation is. You just want to know who gets drafted where. And on Thursday, there were a lot of people who had Richardson plummeting down the draft. Just because, you know why? Because it had to be different. Couldn't be the same thing I said before. Couldn't be that I think he's going to the Colts. I've got to do something different. So 21st, 24th, Peter King had him 23rd, I think. The mock drafts are a joke, but they're a tool. They're a tool to know who is going to be basically in the first round. There'll be 3 or 4 guys that don't go in the first round that you thought would, but they don't. But it's basically the right guys, but guys screw up the order and everything. Don't worry about it. Don't ever worry about where a guy's going to go. The interesting thing, and I just did a column on this for the alumni newsletter, which I love writing for. I write for them every month. And it was about the legacy of Anthony Richardson. And I feel like I was – there's some things I write that I'm not sure I'm suited to write, but this is one I was suited to write because I watched every snap of his career. And but the legacy is great kid, came from Gainesville, played for the Gators. During his time at Florida, Florida lost 17 of its last 29 games. Now, he can't be blamed for the LSU loss in 2000 or any of that or some of the losses with Emory Jones. But I'm just saying, there's a part of you as a Gator, if you're a Gator fan, who goes, man, I'm so happy for I almost said Emory, for Anthony. So happy for Anthony. Gainesville guy, UF grad. He's going to represent the University of Florida. Well, he's a good kid. So happy. And there's part of you that goes, we had a fourth-round pick at quarterback and couldn't win more than 6 games. What happened? Well, a lot of things happened, and I detail it in this column. You can read it if you're an alumni. If you're not, it's all the things we've always talked about. But I got thinking about this today. I was talking to my wife about it. And I do think the Colts are a good fit because they got Gardner Minshew. He's been around. He knows the league. He's not a great athlete. He's not a great quarterback. But the weird thing is they need Anthony to play because he's not played enough football yet to be ready for the NFL. But the problem is, so what do? You say, well, you haven't played enough football, so we can't start you. Or do you say, we got to start you and we're just going to take our lumps, which is what the Colts did with Peyton Manning, by the way. I think his first year I think he threw like 1,000 interceptions his first year. But I was telling my wife, I go, what if Anthony Richardson ends up being great? Okay? And I wouldn't be stunned. I wrote this in the column, and I'm going to ask Andy Staples about this when I have him on. I think Anthony Richardson leaves here with the most upside of any player in the history of the University of Florida. Doesn't mean the upside showed up here. It just means he has the most upside. Because I don't think anybody felt that way about Emmitt Smith or Jack Youngblood. I'm talking about the 2 Hall of Famers Florida has. I don't think anybody felt like they had amazing upsides. They just ended up being really great players. But what if Anthony Richardson is so good? Now, I won't be around to see this, I'm pretty sure, okay? It would be 20 years from now. He's so good, wins multiple MVPs, wins the Super Bowl, goes into the Hall of Fame, goes to camp, goes into the Hall of Fame. He would be eligible for the Ring of Honor. So, I mean, would you put Anthony Richardson in the Ring of Honor at that point? And that is it boggles my mind to think now he's eligible, now you can put him in. But why would you put him in for a career where he was 6 and 7 as a starter? And when I say 6 and 7, guys, he was 6 and 7 as a starter. I know he didn't play in his last game, but he started a game against Georgia. And I think people say, well, he wasn't 6 and 7. He didn't play no. He was 6 and 6 this year. He was 0 and 1 the year before. So just to straighten that out. Anyway, you're getting my point. That is ultimately the legacy, I think, is that this guy could end up in the Hall of Fame and would make him eligible for the Ring of Honor, and we would have now, again, it might be 25 years from now. I probably won't be around, but what a discussion that'll be, whether you put him in the Ring of Honor when he was kind of a mediocre quarterback here. But I'm happy for him. And you saw the emotion. You saw him crying. And that was a kid from Eastside High School who'd been ripped by his own fans, letting it all out. I was the 4th pick in the draft. I got drafted where Kyle Pitts got drafted. Kyle Pitts, who was one of the best players I've ever seen here. I got drafted ahead of where some of the greatest Gators ever got drafted. 2 of the guys, of the guys in the Ring of Honor, on the Ring of Honor, and this is another story I wrote this week. I've been writing my butt off this week. Of the 6 guys in the Ring of Honor, 5 of them were first-round picks. The only one that wasn't was Danny Werfel. He was a 3rd rounder or 4th rounder. Anyway, that's all I have to say about AR for today. We'll get to it later. Number 2 on the Ballyhoos starting lineup, no Osiris Torrance in the first round. We all thought he would be a first-round pick, but I'm telling you, the position of guard is not revered as much as it should be, everybody wants tackles. And you saw a bunch of tackles go. There was like a run on tackles. Then there was a weird run on wide receivers. I'm not sure any of them are going to be tremendous, but whatever. Torrance doesn't go, but I think it's because of the position he plays. He was great at that position. Allowed no sacks. Good run blocker. He'll be fine. Okay, he's going to get a good deal. By the way, I did look this up. Anthony Richardson's first contract is $37 million. First contract, $37 million. That's a good deal. That's why guys want to go to. Everybody goes, I understand why you love college. You don't want to love college. You don't want to love the team. You don't want to root for the same laundry. You want to go to the NFL. Well, there's a reason. You can give me $500,000 in NIL money, or I can go there and get $37 million. So Richardson bet on himself and succeeded. Osiris Torrance did bet on himself, but we all thought he would go out and hasn't gone yet. He'll go early in the second round. I'm not worried about him, but I think it's because he plays guard instead of tackle. All right, let's get to number 3 on the Ballyhoo's starting lineup. Stunning that Will Levis was not drafted. Now, I will say this in the first round. He'll go in the second. I will say this. Not a big Will Levis fan. Guy who puts mayonnaise in his coffee right there. No, and I like mayonnaise, but I don't like it in my coffee. Guy who eats whole bananas, okay, he's got problems. But that's not the point. The point is, I never liked him as a player at Kentucky. I thought he was overrated, but the weird thing is, he is so much like Richardson in that you would draft based on pure potential, not on performance. And Richardson got drafted 4th, and he didn't get drafted in the first round. That's a weird dynamic. But I don't know what's going on there. I do know that he has a toe injury that he got late in the year, and he didn't play like in their bowl game. And maybe there's been talk that some teams couldn't pass him on the physical because he was going to have more surgery. Whatever it is. A lot of guys, I tell you, Brian Branch, the Alabama DB, who I thought would go in the first round. Joey Porter's got to be killing himself from Penn State. Joey Porter has a legacy, has great talent, great measurables. Everything's great. Somehow escapes the first round. And the other guy, these were the 4 guys that were invited there and did not get drafted. Defensive end from Georgia Tech, Keon White. Never heard of him personally. I don't follow the draft that closely. I certainly don't follow Georgia Tech football very closely. But those are the 4 guys. Nothing worse than going to the green room, and not getting drafted. I can't think of anything. Well, I can think of things worse, being in Ukraine right now. That would be worse. But I'm just saying, that's a bad feeling when you go there and you go, hey, my day is finally here. All right, maybe my day will be tomorrow. Anyway, so that was the most interesting things. Number 4 on the Ballyhoo's starting lineup, the Eagles, I thought, had an unbelievable draft, getting Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith to go with, and they're Georgia North now, to go with N'Kobe Dean's there and Jared Davis. So they got 4 of those great Georgia defenders that we all watch and go, they're out of our league. Believe me, I think if you're a Florida fan, you looked at those guys and go, we don't have anybody that looks like that. They get all those guys on a team that played for the national or the Super Bowl, obviously. That was interesting. I thought that there were a couple of drafts that I really liked. I love Seattle's. I love Witherspoon. Guy, his highlight tape was great. Of course, everybody's highlight tape is great. I always wanted them to show the Anthony Richardson bad highlight tape or the Will Levis bad highlight tape because there's a lot of plays on those too. But and then they got the receiver from Ohio State, Jackson. What is it? I can't remember his last name. But anyway, it's a hyphenated name. He's really good. So they got him too, and I think he's a really good player. He missed late part of the year. Anyway, I thought there were some drafts that were really good. There were some that were questionable. I don't get what some teams did. I know Iowa had a great defense, but maybe they had a great defense because they had no offense. I don't know if I would have taken either one of those guys. But anyway, we'll all find out in about 5 years. It's almost like recruiting. Muschamp was famous for the line, we'll know in 4 years, or 3 years, he would always say, whether this is a good recruiting class. Well, you'll know in 3 years whether you had a good draft class, because the bottom line is you don't know. And even you could be rookie of the year. Doesn't mean you're going to be great. Sometimes they don't pan out. And finally, on the Ballyhoo's starting lineup, what in the world is it going to be like to cover the AFC? Look at the quarterbacks you have over there. There's no days off there. You just added Aaron Rodgers. Lamar Jackson re-signs and is going to be there forever. He's going to be their quarterback. You've got Mahomes. You've got Josh Allen. You've got Herbert. You've got Lawrence. You can just go through every team. You don't see a team with a real quarterback weakness out of 26. There may be one or two. But it is going to be amazing. And I think this is Goodell said this last night, this is a great time for the NFL. And I think he is dead right, because you've got great quarterbacks in this league, in a league that you've made quarterback friendly. You've said, don't hit them. If you hit them above here or below here, you're getting a penalty and maybe suspended. You got to hit them only in the stomach. Maybe one day we'll all be talking about the NFL did a study, and this will be like 20 years from now, that apparently stomach injuries are the biggest problem that they've had to deal with, because you got to hit them right there. That's it. Can't hit them anywhere else. It is going to be a fun year. I will say that. I am already looking forward to the NFL, not to the second round of the draft. I couldn't care less. Some people do. They care a lot. All right, so that's going to do it for our Ballyhoo's starting lineup today. We'll take a break. When we come back, Andy Staples from The Athletic is going to join us. I got a lot of things to throw at him, including what we're doing in the SEC. We still don't know schedule-wise. The news that came out this week also about the scheduling for the first playoff, which will be next year, I'm sorry. We'll talk to him all about that. We'll also do Yes, Nowhere. Maybe he'll join us on the Big Mills Cheesesteaks Zoom line. And then, of course, in the third segment, we'll get to all our fun stuff that we do. You are watching or listening to another duly noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios. Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dooley, of course, from another duly noted podcast. And this is a great Adam Brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adam Brewer To Go. What gave you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place?
We really like the fast concept, being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal where everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adam's Rib Co. To Go. Come on down and enjoy it.
Albert, Alberta, I understand you were witnesses to a crash. Can you tell us about the accident? When you're in a crash, it's important to get witness statements immediately after the accident. Whether you're in a car, truck, motorcycle, scooter, or even a golf cart accident, at Meldon Law, we won't back down.
Great food, great atmosphere, a diverse menu, everything made from scratch, plenty of space, and locally owned. These are all the characteristics of a great restaurant, and you can find each and every one of them right here in Gainesville at Ballyhoo Grill. Ballyhoo Grill prepares all of their food fresh every day, from their salad dressing to their award-winning soups. Bring your family and enjoy dinner under the Tim Tebow Tiki Hut while listening to live music. Or if you're running low on time to eat out, they also deliver through Uber Eats, Bite Squad, and Postmates. A Gainesville staple that's been open for over 30 years. Check out Ballyhoo Grill on Facebook or at ballyhoogrill.com.
As the oldest Gator booster club in the world, Gainesville Quarterback Club gives you access to elite speakers like coaches, NCAA football insiders, Gator greats, and more, including yours truly. Share your passion for Gator football with hundreds of other members at weekly in-season meetings, home game tailgates, and special events throughout the year. Join the Gainesville Quarterback Club today. Trial membership until April 11th only, featuring Billy Napier and Tommy Townsend. Email the club at membership@quarterbackclub.org. That's membership@quarterbackclub.org, or call me, and I'll let you get to the right people. Another duly noted podcast comes to you from the Coaches Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Celebration Point. You can watch and listen to us on Facebook and YouTube for every podcast that we do on Mondays and Fridays at 2 o'clock. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, any of the other 39 platforms where you can find this podcast or your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below or call me if you want to do some advertising at 352-317-3444.
Things have certainly got a little out of hand lately when it comes to just buying our everyday necessities. Just look at gas, streaming services, and heck, even chicken wings. Well, there is one necessity that shouldn't cost a ton: taking care of yourself and helping fix all the aches and pains in life, and the fine folks at Titan MRI agree. With costs a fraction of what you'd pay at a hospital, you'll not only save money, you'll be taken care of by staff with over 20 years experience. So when you need an MRI, call Titan first, and you can go where your doctors send their families. Now offering CAT scans.
Okay, welcome back to another duly noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios. It is a great pleasure to bring in our Big Mills Cheesesteaks Zoom line, the great Andy Staples, who I was just trying to think of Andy. Of course, Andy works for The Athletic, does great work there. I'm a subscriber. I implore you to be subscribers. You don't know what you're missing if you don't. I was thinking about the greatest upside guy who ever left here. I'm just saying just pure upside. And I told my wife, I said, I think it's Anthony Richardson might be, and then I went, or Javon Curse, who you were on a team with him, right?
No, they found the right way to use Javon
last
year.
That's true, yeah.
So the thing about Javon was he was a safety in high school. He was a 6'3", 225-pound safety who then got bigger but stayed the same speed. But Javon, so they moved him to linebacker, and I just don't know that he was the right temperament for linebacker. Like, he wanted to hit you, he wanted to collide with you, and that's not what you want to be as a linebacker. Like, Mike Peterson is the ideal future NFL linebacker. Like, he doesn't let you touch him.
Yeah.
And he's always, one step ahead of you getting the ball. Javon was much more straight line speed, and, in terms of dealing with big guys, he was so much more explosive than the other big guys. And so when you put him on the line of scrimmage, you couldn't do anything with him. And I think that's what that was Bob Stoops. I think they did it in '97. But it didn't
more
really...
98 though. Yeah, and they would literally
98.
stand him up at the line, and so the quarterback had half the field shut off. He could not throw the ball to that half of the field.
So Florida got a year of that out of Javon. It could have been 3 years if he hadn't spent that time at linebacker, but you didn't know because you were converting him from safety. Right. So, but I think Richardson is definitely the highest upside guy because he's one of the highest upside guys in the history of the draft. The athleticism from him is off the charts. The arm strength is off the charts. And that's why it's so hard to reconcile the numbers from last year.
It is. I
But the other
looked.
thing it's hard to, the other thing, Pat, it's hard to reconcile for me is like, I wrote this on our draft blog last night because everybody keeps saying, well, he only started 13 games. He only started 13 games. Like, he was in control of that. Like, I realize this is 2020 hindsight, but how in the world, if you're Dan Mullen, do you not look at that during spring practice 2021 and go, I love Emory Jones. He's been so loyal, such a great guy, but I have Superman on the roster. I should probably just build the offense around him.
Well, I'll always wonder because I wrote about this for the alumni newsletter. I wrote a kind of an essay on the legacy of Anthony Richardson, which is so complicated. And one thing I wrote about was the game against USF. He's running 70 yards for the clinching touchdown. And I turned to my daughter. He's about the 15-yard line. And I said, Emory Jones needs to get in the portal now. And he pulls his hamstring on the 10-yard line.
If he hadn't done that,
yeah, who
I
knows?
think there would have been more Sturm and Drang about what are you doing. But remember, Dan Mullen historically did not like changing quarterbacks. I mean, he doesn't go to Kyle Trask unless Felipe Franks gets hurt. I believe it was Tyler Russell who got hurt that ushered in the Dak Prescott era at Mississippi State. So, it was a very fixed succession plan. And so I do wonder how things might have turned out differently, either if he hadn't popped his hamstring on that play, or if in the spring they'd said, we need to build the offense around this guy. He's our opening day starter. Why are we even thinking about this any other way?
Yeah, but I mean, again, we go back to I looked this up the other day, and his 7 home games during his last year at Florida, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 7 home games. Like You're not supposed to be good on the road, but you're supposed to be good at home. And it's such a weird legacy. But Andy, you're an alumni of University of Florida, so you're aware of the Ring of Honor, okay? But I was thinking about this. What if Anthony ends up being this great player, this awesome player in the NFL, and he gets into the Hall of Fame? Now, this is after I'm dead, okay? After I'm dead. He gets into it goes to Canton, and now he's eligible for the Ring of Honor in a place where he got booed. That would be weird.
Is Terrell Davis in Georgia's? Does Georgia have a Ring of Honor like that? Like, is Terrell Davis there? Because
I think he might be there. Yeah,
that's the only one I can think of where, and he had some production in college, but nothing compared to what he was in the pros. And he's so strange. And the thing is, I saw Billy Napier at the draft, and he's doing all the photo ops, and obviously it's great for recruiting if a guy from your program goes in the first round. But it's so weird because it just makes me want to ask Billy Napier more questions. Like,
exactly.
Why didn't you get more out of this? You went 6-6.
Well, not only that, but when you you would think this is going to help you recruiting quarterbacks because, hey, we got a guy in here, had 1 year with him, 4th pick in the draft. Look what we did. But if any of those guys have cable, they won't feel that way because it didn't go well often. But it went well. That's the thing. There's never been a bigger yin and yang guy than Anthony Richardson in the history of college football, in my mind.
Yeah, it is so strange. And the thing is, talking to NFL people through this pre-draft process, I came to understand why they were so willing to overlook some of that stuff. He's a smart guy. He's a coachable guy. He's willing to listen. None of the things that usually accompany somebody whose production doesn't match their traits, he doesn't have any of those things. Because a lot of times those people are attitude problems, or they're lazy, or they're not smart. Like, he's none of those things. He's everything you want except for the production. And so they all feel like they can fix him or they can do better than the coaches who had him. And I mean, we'll see. Shane Steichen is an interesting head coach for him to have. You know, Shane Steichen was the OC at the Eagles. And I was thinking about this last night, Pat. Like, if you take Jalen Hurts' first 13 starts at Alabama, now they played in the national championship game his freshman year. They lost to Clemson. But if you take those first 13 starts, you would never imagine the kind of throwing performance you saw in the Super Bowl.
That he would have that he would be assigned one of the richest contracts in the history of the sport.
Exactly. So it is entirely possible that they believe that they can do the same thing with Anthony Richardson. The raw material is probably better. He has a better arm than Jalen Hurts. He's a faster runner than Jalen Hurts. He's bigger than Jalen Hurts. The only thing he can't do is deadlift as much as Jalen Hurts. But now Jalen Hurts, historically, from high school on, that guy in the locker room. Like, every player just flocks to him. They all love him. Anthony, everybody seems to like him. I don't know that you got the "we will follow you into the gates of hell" kind of thing that you got with Hurts.
He's got
to develop that. Yeah,
that's the thing, Andy. That and Jeff Cardozo, who's my partner on radio, talked about it a lot. The it factor never seemed to be there. Likable guy, very popular with his teammates, great with the fans, but just it almost like he turned it on and off. Like, oh, we're getting killed by LSU. I'm going to go 85 yards and nobody's going to tackle me. Okay, you can't tackle me. Just so you know.
But
he would
here's
do
the
things
thing.
like that.
Here's the thing that I'm curious about, because it seemed like when things were most desperate was when he shined, because they just turned him loose.
Yes, exactly.
So maybe their structure that he was being forced to operate in was not the best thing for him. And that's the part that I want to find. And I'm not just talking about the Napier staff. I'm talking about the previous staff too. Same thing. So it drives me nuts when coaches say this is what we do and they don't tailor it to the people on the field. And if Shane Steichen can build something around Anthony Richardson and it looks like he's perfect for it, it looks like an offense that was tailored to him, then you have some legitimate criticisms of the people who coached him in college.
True. Yeah, it's almost like the better Anthony does, the more it looks bad for Billy and Dan.
Oh, look, here's the thing. For Billy, if he gets production out of Graham Mertz when Paul Chryst couldn't do it at Wisconsin, then Billy's that actually probably becomes a better recruiting chip for Billy than Anthony going number 4.
Yeah, that's no question about it. I do want to talk some college football with you, and especially, I guess there was a story out there that they've set the schedule for the playoffs next year, which we can't get a schedule in the SEC for next year, but we got a playoff schedule.
It's coming, Pat. There's fist fights behind the scenes about these 3 permanent opponents.
Well, we'll get to that, but I do want to ask you about, was there anything about the schedule that you saw? It just, when I saw it, the first thing I thought was, man, bowl games are done. That just because if you're playing on the 21st, and I think that's when Florida played their bowl game this year.
It's that Saturday, but Pat, come on. You got to have something, because remember, the kids are out of school.
Yeah.
A lot of people are out of work or are not working that week. So you got to have something to do on that Tuesday afternoon. You got to have the Boca Raton Bowl or the Bahamas Bowl to bet on.
I'll watch it.
I will too. And the gamblers will watch it. So
yep.
you know there's a built-in audience for those things. But yeah, the big deal yesterday was that it will be going up against NFL regular season games, which there was no way to avoid any situation where you're going up against an NFL game. What I'm interested to see is, does the NFL get a chunk taken out of its ratings by this? Because they don't have to play those games on that day. Because they just move those to Saturday.
That's the last game of the year, right, for the NFL?
No. They've got 2 more weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So It's just that there aren't any more CFP games that would be scheduled
Right.
for a Saturday at that point. But what they could do, like, because I got a feeling those first round games are gonna be pretty popular, and they're gonna be fun. They're gonna be on campus, and so if the NFL sees a little dip in its ratings for those games, they'll just move those games. Like they can move them back to Sunday if they want to.
Right.
So, or they just say, look, we can coexist, and I don't have a problem with that either. I don't. You just aren't going to be able to avoid that at that point. So, if it gets more, and the thing is, certain college football playoff games may get more audience because if the NFL, if those games are both in the day, and then the best college game goes off at 8 o'clock Eastern time, that's what everybody's going to turn to. Because they're like, oh, we're all football today, and the whole world goes to that. So I don't necessarily think it's a huge problem because there was really no way to do this without at some point encountering the NFL.
Yeah, and the other thing is because unless you have the ticket, which a lot of people do, but not everybody does, you may be stuck with a game that nobody wants to watch in the NFL.
Well, no, that's Saturday, so those are going to be national games.
But it's
they're
still
only going to be one per window.
But you never know what games are being played, and it's kind of
Right.
like watching the NCAA tournament where you go, well, we've got multiple games. If there's a bad game, big deal. I go to another game,
Well,
and
they flex those, so they're not necessarily going to be the best games.
right,
Because they still want the best game on Sunday night,
right.
or Monday night, and so yeah, I think it's going to be okay. I don't think it was avoidable anyway, and they're going to try to do Friday nights for the quarters and the semi. Well, they'll have January 1st for the quarters, and then they're going to try to do Friday nights for the semis, and I think that's fine. I think you can work with that, and they want to put those games in prime time anyway. Like they like them in prime time, and then championship game still on a Monday. That way you're avoiding the NFL entirely. So I can live with it, and you're still going to get the same complaints from people who don't want to stay up late on a Monday night to watch a championship game, but you got to do it sometime, and you want it in prime time.
Right. I wanted to ask you about, I think it was your mailbag that you talked about. Somebody asked you about Tennessee and whether they would have an issue recruiting quarterbacks in the future. Well, they certainly haven't had an issue because the offense they run is not – it's very much read one side of the field, and that's not going to work in the NFL. Hendon Hooker doesn't get drafted. I think it's more about the knee than anything else. I love Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, and the whole Hendon Hooker first-round conversation is a very recent thing. We were expecting Hendon Hooker to get picked today for most of the pre-draft process, like sometime in the second or third round. I don't think that's surprising that he's going to get picked in the second or third round.
I think he was the best quarterback in the country last year. I went before he got hurt. There was nobody doing what he did, and I loved watching him play. But what are your thoughts on that? Whether that is an issue or not, that you're not getting prepared for the NFL?
Well, it's one of those things where a smart enough quarterback is going to be able to learn what they need to learn. But the offense doesn't translate to the NFL. It doesn't. That is a fact. Like, that's not being biased for or against any schools. That is a fact. I've written about this offense since it started at Baylor. Well, it's actually started in Texas high school football with Art Briles. And then he becomes the head coach at Houston, the head coach at Baylor. And it becomes, the offense that allows Baylor to start winning the Big 12. And I sat down with Briles for hours discussing this offense. And it's really interesting how it all came to be. Like, for example, one of the reasons why the routes are the way they are and the receivers are so far outside is he was a high school coach. He's trying to get basketball players to come play. They don't want to block.
Yeah.
So he creates this thing where they can just line up right next to the sideline and go be athletes, and you'll throw it up to him. And now it got more advanced as he took it into college, but he translated that to college. It is but it is the width of the offense is what makes it different than everything else. If you watch, Tennessee does it now. The receivers on a lot of plays are on both sides of the formation on the sideline, essentially. And you don't see that with other offenses. Even air raid, they don't do that. There's the wide side of the field, the guy will be near the sideline, but the short side of the field, the boundary, the guy will be near the sideline. But on the field side, you'll see the receiver, closer to the hash marks. That's not the case in this offense. And that doesn't really translate to the NFL because it's got narrower hash marks. So, it's the wide side of the field is not as wide. And so that advantage gets taken away. But what they're doing is they stretch the whole defense out. And if you don't have 2 lockdown corners and 4 defensive linemen that can beat the 5 offensive linemen, they're going to destroy you all day because you're going to have to declare with your linebackers and safeties what you want to try to take away. Like, you could put more DBs on the field and spread them out, but they're just going to run on you. Like they run the Bryles offense was just the old Bill Yeoman Houston veer.
Yeah.
And they're going to run that inside
exactly.
over and over again until you put somebody else in the box. Like those Baylor teams would lead the Big 12 in rushing more than they would lead the Big 12 in passing. And then as soon as you bring people into the box, then they're going, straight at you with those receivers. They'll stack them up so that their fastest receiver will wind up on a safety. This is what, if you watch the Tennessee-Alabama game last year, they did a great job putting Jalen Hyatt in places where he would get matched up with like DeMarco Helms, the safety, who's a really good safety, but he's playing 15 yards off the ball and Jalen Hyatt is coming at him with a running start. Like there's nothing he can do in that situation. So the problem is in the NFL, it's not the hash marks are different. All of the defensive players are fast enough to cover the entire width of the field. That's not, you can't take advantage of that anymore. So the quarterback does have to do more. He has to deal more with protections and checks at the line of scrimmage than he has to do in that offense. So yes, it is something the quarterback and the receivers specifically have to adjust to. It's also something some of the linemen have to adjust to. But here's the thing. It has become so common in college. Tennessee runs it. Ole Miss runs it. Oklahoma runs it. USF runs it. So many programs run it now that are you just going to delete those athletes off your board and not even try? I don't think that's going to happen. I think NFL coaches will say, you know what, we're going to figure out how to make this work. We're going to figure out how to adjust to this and bring these guys along. The reason it's so much more prolific now, like Bryles, before he got fired at Baylor, was really secretive about this thing. Nobody ran it. It was him, and then his son Kendall was his OC, and his son-in-law, Jeff Lebby, who's now Oklahoma's OC, was also a position coach there. Philip Montgomery was the OC before Kendall. He left to become Tulsa's head coach, so he ran it. Dino Babers had been with them for a bit, so he ran it at Bowling Green and then at Syracuse, but nobody else ran it. And then after Bryles got fired, the assistants spread out. The don't tell anybody how this works stuff was gone, and because they needed jobs. They're helping anybody who wants to learn this offense. And so now you're seeing it all over the country. So I just don't think NFL teams are going to go, nah, we don't really want any skill players from Oklahoma, Tennessee, Ole Miss, TCU, blah, 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 down the line. You can't do that. You have to be willing to just work with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating stuff. It is time for us to play Yes, No, Where, Maybe with Andy Staples. It is brought to you by Big Mill's Cheesesteak. If you go in there and say you listen to another Dooley Noted podcast and that you appreciate their sponsorship of the Bob Dooley Invitational, you get free fries with your order. Number 1 on Yes, No, Where, Maybe, Andy, Georgia and Alabama will be playing in the SEC championship game this year.
Maybe verging on no way. I think it's a rematch.
Really?
LSU rematch. The Alabama quarterback situation scares me.
It does. But and the thing is, there's going to be a lot of summer love for LSU. Every time there is, They don't live up to it. When you don't have it is when they get good.
Well, that's when they had Les Miles and Ed Orgeron.
That's true.
They've got a coach now who's been fairly consistent, who's coaching at a place where the degree of difficulty is actually lower than the place he was at before.
Yeah, I don't know why I've
By the
got
way, two really good offensive tackles who happen to be sophomores, and the best linebacker in the country who also happens to be like.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They got some stuff that travels. Like, you can talk about hype and all that. You got really good offensive tackles. You're usually just good.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. I don't know who I'd pick right now. I'd probably lean towards LSU. Number 2 on yes, nowhere, maybe Alabama. I don't know why I'm asking all these Alabama questions.
Everybody loves Alabama
is now QBU.
Yes, based on the draft last night. No, based on the other stuff that happened yesterday, which is, so think about this, Pat. Since Jalen Hurts took over for Blake Barnett in the first, I can't remember if it was first or second quarter of the USC game in 2016, the season opener, Alabama has had an NFL starter at quarterback the entire time.
Yep.
For 7 years. Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Mac Jones, Bryce Young. Because Bryce Young's going to walk into Carolina and start. That's incredible. That is an unbelievable streak. And it got everybody spoiled. And they seem to have very good succession plans. Now, they weren't entirely sure Mac was the guy when Tua left, but they were sure enough. Like, he was very much the favorite to win the job, and you kind of knew he was going to be the guy. And Bryce was definitely the guy after Mac. You saw the spring game last week. Clearly,
good. Yeah.
They don't have a decision made between Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. Dylan Lonergan and Eli Holstein are freshmen. They're probably not expecting them to jump in and start. So on Thursday, they get a commitment from Notre Dame transfer Tyler Buckner. And if one thing hadn't happened, I'd be like, oh, this sounds good. This is a good situation. So remember, Tyler Buckner was Notre Dame's opening day starter last year. He hurts his shoulder. Comes back into the bowl game against South Carolina. Plays really well. But Tommy Rees was the offensive coordinator. Tommy Rees is now Alabama's offensive coordinator. He didn't go there until February because remember, Bill O'Brien didn't get the Patriots job until later, even though everybody knew he was going to get the Patriots job.
That's right.
So here's the thing. When Tyler Buckner was playing for Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl, everybody knew Sam Hartman was going to Notre Dame. So Sam Hartman was the Wake Forest quarterback. He was very prolific there. The decision for him was really go into the draft or try my hand at a even bigger college program, and that's what he decided to do. So he was going to Notre Dame. So, like, if Tommy Rees were to come to Alabama and then the Notre Dame quarterback who he picked as his opening day starter last year were to follow him from Notre Dame to Alabama, under normal circumstances, you go, oh, okay. He knows something we don't. He's seen this guy at practice. Buckner was hurt most of last year. This guy must be awesome. But we just watched Tommy Rees recruit over Tyler Buckner before he left Notre Dame. So what does that say?
Yeah, I think that's why I am sitting here going, don't ever count Alabama out, but
yeah,
it's going to be interesting.
So talented everywhere else, but
exactly.
But that and the thing
and they have the number 1 class coming in. Yeah,
right. And one of those freshmen might be the guy. We don't know. I mean, they got thrown into the spring game. They should have been in high school. All that stuff. I thought Dylan Lonergan looked really good, but they didn't make Dylan Lonergan play against the same level of defensive talent that they made Ty Simpson and Jalen Milroe play against. So I don't know if what we saw meant anything there. What we saw with Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson definitely meant they don't think either one of those guys clearly won the job. And Saban said it yesterday with Reese Davis. He basically said we gave them a chance to win the job in the spring. He didn't say they didn't win it, but we know he
But we
means
need
they didn't win
competition.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the crux of it all. And it's strange because you look around at the other SEC programs at the top. Georgia's very set. Carson Beck's going to be the guy. They like Brock Vandegrift and Gunnar Stockton. They can lose one of them if they have to, and they're not going to sweat it too much. But Carson Beck is the guy, and he looked incredible in their spring game. LSU, Jaden Daniels, he's got his faults, but he really developed last year. And if you look at the history of Jaden Daniels at Arizona State, when he's got talent around him, it's pretty damn good. Garrett Nussmeier, their backup, is pretty good too. And I think if he didn't just like the situation he's in at LSU, he'd have been a prime, like he could start somewhere else right now. But I think he likes being at LSU.
I can think of one place.
Well, that's exactly. He likes being at LSU, and he's going to be the starter at LSU next year. So he's okay. And the thing is, Jaden Daniels runs a lot. There's a very good chance Garrett Nussmeier is going to be needed at LSU this year. So he's there. We'll see with Joe Milton in Tennessee. It's one game. That Orange Bowl is one game.
Yeah.
But if you've ever seen Joe Milton before, very much like Anthony Richardson, arms like this don't come along very often. So if Josh Heupel has figured it out with Joe Milton, they're in good shape there too. So this is Alabama's issue. Like, you're dealing with 3 other programs, 2 of whom you play, and 1 who you play if you win your division, who are very set at quarterback. And
absolutely
probably better than you at quarterback.
Yep. All right, number 3 on yes, nowhere. Maybe if it's done properly, you prefer brisket over ribs.
No, I still like ribs better. Brisket.
You're a good man.
I appreciate the degree of difficulty cooking brisket. It's the hardest barbecue meat to cook, but I just love ribs. I've always loved ribs. Always were kind of a luxury item to me. Like, my parents were like, we're not springing for ribs. And so any chance I get to eat ribs, I'm doing. And I'm a spare rib guy. Baby backs are, I don't think they have enough fat. It doesn't cook up exactly right. Good baby backs are pretty good, but
good baby backs are hard to beat. Yeah.
Yeah. I still good spare ribs I will take every time. And I'll be happy, and you get the pile of bones at the end. It's very satisfying to feel like you've accomplished something. So I'm gonna go ribs on that one.
Brontosaurus ribs, like the old Fred Flintstone ones. Those are
now, beef rib. Now we're talking. We're in different territory. Like, you go to Texas and you go to like Louis Mueller Barbecue in Taylor, Texas. The beef rib there, and it looks like the thing that they hand Fred Flintstone in the opening credits. Like. It's amazing. Now, the price of beef, it costs like $80 now, but it's still worth every penny.
Andy, we went along with you, but that's because we love talking to you, and you're great, and we appreciate your time as always. We'll get you on again as we get closer to football season. But thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Pat. I appreciate it.
All right, the great Andy Staples from The Athletic. We appreciate him. We'll take a break. We'll come back with all of our fun stuff that we got to get to, Hesser and Kipke, this, that, and the other, all that stuff. Coming up here on another Duly Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios. Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dooley, of course, from another Duly Noted podcast. And this is the great Adam Brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adam Brewer To Go. What gave you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place like this?
We really like the fast concept. Being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal where everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adam's Rib Co. To Go. Come on down and enjoy it.
Albert, Alberta, I understand you were witnesses to a crash. Can you tell us about the accident? When you're in a crash, it's important to get witness statements immediately after the accident. Whether you're in a car, truck, motorcycle, scooter, or even a golf cart accident, at Meldon Law, we won't back down.
Great food, great atmosphere, a diverse menu, everything made from scratch, plenty of space, and locally owned. These are all the characteristics of a great restaurant, and you can find each and every one of them right here in Gainesville at Ballyhoo Grill. Ballyhoo Grill prepares all of their food fresh every day, from their salad dressing to their award-winning soups. Bring your family and enjoy dinner under the Tim Trebo Tiki Hut while listening to live music. Or if you're running low on time to eat out, they also deliver through Uber Eats, Bite Squad, and Postmates. A Gainesville staple that's been open for over 30 years. Check out Ballyhoo Grill on Facebook or at ballyhoogrill.com.
As the oldest Gator booster club in the world, Gainesville Quarterback Club gives you access to elite speakers like coaches, NCAA football insiders, Gator greats, and more, including yours truly. Share your passion for Gator football with hundreds of other members at weekly in-season meetings, home game tailgates, and special events throughout the year. Join the Gainesville Quarterback Club today. Trial membership until April 11th only, featuring Billy Napier and Tommy Townsend. Email the club at membership@quarterbackclub.org. That's membership@quarterbackclub.org, or call me, and I'll let you get to the right people.
Things have certainly got a little out of hand lately when it comes to just buying our everyday necessities. Just look at gas, streaming services, and heck, even chicken wings. Well, there is one necessity that shouldn't cost a ton: taking care of yourself and helping fix all the aches and pains in life, and the fine folks at Titan MRI agree. With costs a fraction of what you'd pay at a hospital, you'll not only save money, you'll be taken care of by staff with over 20 years experience. So when you need an MRI, call Titan first, and you can go where your doctors send their families. Now offering CAT scans.
Okay, welcome back to another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Gator Studios. We appreciate all of our great sponsors, many of them who are involved in our golf tournament, almost all of them, to be honest with you. We just appreciate people like Andy for coming on and giving us our time. It's been a lot of fun doing this show, and we're enjoying it. And we appreciate Jared for all the work he's doing too. Let us get to our Hesser and Kipke three things. Of course, it is brought to you by Hesser and Kipke, which is a Gainesville law firm specializing in the areas of workers' compensation and family law. Ken and Jennifer take great pride in their one-to-one focus on each and every client they represent. Ken is board certified in workers' compensation law by the Florida Bar, while Jennifer possesses extensive jury trial experience with a nearly 20-year background as a prosecutor. Don't believe me? Check out their more than 55 five-star Google reviews, or better yet, give them a call at 352-339-9920. Hesser and Kipke. I'm trying to work them into the tournament right now, so don't worry, I'm going to get it done. All right, number one, I talked about the NBA playoffs. I do watch a little bit of them. I like to watch fourth quarters, but even the fourth quarter, you turn on and you go, there's still 8 minutes to go. It just feels like it goes on forever. Anyway, Celtics eliminate the Hawks. No big surprise there. But the Heat beating the Bucks, of course, happened this week, and I was surprised. If I was anybody playing the Heat, I would put 2 guys on Jimmy Butler. That would be it. I go, you guys try to beat us. We'll play the box and one or whatever. But he's incredible, Jimmy Buckets. So congratulations to them. We'll get to the playoffs in just a minute, the rest of them. Number 2 on Hesser and Kipke, 3 things. Andy mentioned Tyler Buckner going to Alabama for the Notre Dame transfer, and that's a guy that, of course, we always have our antennas up. Who is Florida going to get as another quarterback? Because they've already said they're going to try to get another quarterback. That one's out, and I think a lot of us were going, man, if you can get him, he'd be all right. I mean, I think he'd be all right. Who knows if he's going to be good or not? So we'll see what happens. By the time you listen to this, it may be that they've announced a quarterback coming in or there's been a commitment. But when you think about the quarterbacks in this league, this is a year, if you have a great quarterback, to maybe steal some wins. And I don't think Florida does. That's the problem. Anyway, number 3 is it's going to be really hard for me this year to be a Braves fan. And because Eige Minter is our closer, who yesterday gave up 5 runs in the 9th inning of a 4-0 lead, and they lost. But they're 17-9. It's a long season. It goes forever. They're going to be talking about it in September, okay? Can they make it? I'm not too worried, but got to get a closer, Braves. He ain't any good. He wasn't any good last year. I know his numbers were. His ERA's like over 6. Get a closer. Come on. That is our Hesser and Kipke. And Ken Hesser does not want him to get a closer because he's a Phillies fan. All right, let's get to Leonardo's and Millhopper quick picks. Most of you got it right because you picked FSU to beat Florida in softball. Sorry, you got it right. This week it's going to be a Sunday game in the NBA. Miami at the Knicks, game 1. So that'll be a good game to pick. I think it's a tough call. Miami at the Knicks, game 1. Very simple. Had a great lunch over at Leonardo's. Talked to Pat Bates. Spent some time with him. He was in town. What a great guy. His kid's getting ready to go to school here. So cool. All right. Let's go to this and the other, which is brought to you by Ballyhoo, which we mentioned earlier. By, of course, Ironwood Golf Course, where they got a lot of rain. They had to close the back 9 because they got so much rain, which is good because there's been a drought. We're hoping it's in perfect shape in 2 weeks. And then, obviously, by Darshackow Insurance. We appreciate all of our great sponsors, especially Darshackow Insurance, who one time was a sponsor of the Bob Dooley Invitational. Number 1, this. No, it's not number 1. It's this. This, that, and the other. Okay, this. We get all excited for the draft, and I was one of those guys. I was one of those guys who was like, what time is it? It's only 7:12? Come on. When's the draft going to start? When's it? I want to see what happens here. Because you talk about it, it gets talked about forever. It's like 3 months of talking, and none of it really matters. So that is, then the draft starts, and you go, this is boring. It's terrible. I think by 8:30 there have been 2 picks. And a show that started at 8. And you go, and then Anthony Richardson gets drafted, and you go, okay, I can go to bed now. Old man, hey, I can go to bed. But you still want to watch it because you want to see where these guys that you followed or paid attention to or interviewed, in many cases, in college go. But you get bored because it is boring. I'm sorry, it is boring. The presentation is boring. They should do this thing in 2-minute increments. Boom, boom, boom. And do the whole draft in one night like they used to. But then the other is this, and that was this kid, Kyle Stickles. Kyle Stickles was a Make-A-Wish kid, 13 I think he was, had bone cancer, beat it. His wish on the Make-A-Wish thing was to announce the Jets' first-round pick. And he came out there with all the energy you could possibly want. I hate the Jets, okay? I hate the Jets. I've been an anti-Jets. I was a big Namath guy, but then I went – there's a lot of reasons why. My hatreds, I can't even explain a lot of them. I don't like the Jets. But all of a sudden I went, you know what? I don't like Aaron Rodgers either, but this kid made me like the Jets. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it. The energy of him announcing the first-round pick was so cool. And that's where you go, yeah, the NFL knows what they're doing. That's why they're the king. All right, that is this, that, and the other. Let us get to our Adams Ribco to go Gator of the week, and I could easily make it Anthony Richardson. You were the 4th pick in the draft. You're the Gator of the week. But we've talked enough about him. So I'm going to go with Luke Heyman, the catcher for Florida, freshman who had 2 RBI in the win over UNF. Not only that, but he has got 6 hits in his last 3 games. He has kind of done the opposite of what Derek Fabian did last year, where he was great and then he hit a wall. Heyman kind of hit that wall a little bit and now has come out of it. And that's a good sign for Florida going down the stretch. So he is our Adams Ribco to go Gator of the week. Adams Ribco to go. Adams' birthday was yesterday. I'm not going to tell you how old he is, but he's way younger than me. And one of my favorite people in the world. Let's get to the Eige Odell Realty games of the weekend. Florida plays Missouri in baseball Friday at 7 o'clock. It's on the Plus. Saturday at 7 is on the SEC Network. Sunday at 12 on the SEC Network. Softball plays Ole Miss at home. Friday at 6 on the Plus. Saturday on the SEC Network. Sunday on the SEC Network at 12. Saturday is at 3. Yes, they're playing 12 o'clock games right here. I don't get it. I don't know why they can't. And it's not Florida. It's the networks. That's what they decided they want it to be in the SEC. I don't get it. Some basketball Friday night, Sacramento Golden State, 8 o'clock ESPN. I am all over that game. Monday, Memphis at the Lakers. I would like to be all over that game. It starts at 10:30. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see if I can have the stamina. Sunday, there's a bunch of if necessary games, but that is the day that Miami and New York play in Game 1 on ABC. That game is on ABC. By the way, the Philadelphia-Denver is playing Saturday on TNT, Game 1. That's an 8:30 game. So there are your games of the weekend. You got a lot to watch this weekend. There's no doubt about it. Or go to. We'll hope there's no rain. Finally, on the Eastlake Pediatrics, Pat Dooley Storytime. We appreciate Mike. We're talking to Mike via emails this week. He's got a great group coming up here to play in the Bob Dooley. I want to tell this quick story because we were talking about the draft, and I was talking about this a little bit yesterday with somebody. We're at the Birmingham Bowl, and the Birmingham Bowl was a terrible bowl, but the setup was good for the media. It was a really cool area in Birmingham, and we had a great restaurant we could go to, and it was like a bar restaurant, and we liked it. It was perfect for us. We could watch games, we could eat, have a great meal. They had great food. I didn't remember the name of it, and have a couple of beers. So we're in there one day, and there's two young ladies sitting next to us, and like me and Robbie are not hitting on it, believe me, because A, we're married, and B, no chance. But in come a couple of Florida football players, and they sit down there, and we're like respecting them, and we're giving them their space. We're not going to say anything to them. But they started talking to the girls, which they should, and I finally leaned over to one of them. I said, ask him what his draft status, his evaluation is. His draft evaluation was. So she does. She goes, so where do you think you're going to get drafted? And he says, oh, they told me second round. It was DJ Humphries. Okay, he went in the first round, and he's still playing in the league, and he's played like 8 years. But all I'm thinking is, I got some scoop. Now, I probably put it as a note at the bottom of the column, but I'll never forget that. You know, when you think about, everybody tries to keep these evaluations quiet, and then all of a sudden, because some media guys at a bar talks a girl into asking you, now it's out there, second round. But he went in the first round. So, I got a couple of those stories. I may tell another one next week. That'll do it for the show. Appreciate Andy Staples so much. Always appreciate Jared for doing a wonderful job. And we'll be back again Monday. Blake Topmeyer will join us from USA Today. We'll talk a lot about the SEC schedule then, which we'll know more about, I think. Maybe not. And, of course, we'll talk about all the games that are being played this weekend. Until then, I am Pat Dooley. I am deep, I'm way back, and I am out of here.